a lot of people think that the Bible is great for children, that it has wonderful lessons and is filled with great fairy tales that anyone can learn all sorts of good things from. If you've been watching this channel at all, you should know well and good by now that that's not the case. And even if you have and you still don't believe it, well, today's episode will definitely prove that the Bible is totally not meant for kids to read. Welcome, my friends, to another episode of The Good, the Bad and the Bible. My name is Rogan and you are watching The Mysterious Stoner in a Bowler. If you're not familiar with what goes on here on this channel, well, the title basically says it all. We talk about the good, the bad that is both contained in the Bible, because the Bible does have both good and bad things in it. People want to say that it's completely holy, that it's perfect, that there's nothing wrong with it. Well, I used to believe it, and I beg to differ. And so, that's what I talk about here. Today, we are going to be having a pretty good mixture, actually. I was very surprised by what I came across. And so, without further ado, let's dive in, shall we? So first things first. Chapter 13 and 14 are both very long chapters. They're the next ones in the chronological order that we've been going through. They are both almost 60 verses long each. So nearly 120, all pertaining to leprosy. I'm not going to get into everything that it talks about, and I should probably explain to you what leprosy is, if you've never heard of it. It's not a common disease anymore, but back then it was a rather large issue, and they didn't have a cure for it for a very long time. But this disease was quite nasty. If you got it, you would, well, wherever it would start off, it could start off anywhere on the part of your body. But like say if it started to it was like on your fingers, for example, you would lose sensation. You wouldn't be able to feel pain. And eventually the leprosy would eat away at your hand your finger until your finger falls off, and it would continue moving on and spreading throughout your body. Slowly, literally eating your body away while you are alive. And you wouldn't feel it because that's part of what's getting eaten as well by this sickness. A very, very nasty disease. So these two chapters are dedicated completely on how to identify it in someone and also how to spot it when it's in a house. Like, I guess it could spread almost like mold in a way. And they had a whole process for identifying it and cleansing it from the house. So they probably burned it. I didn't read it because we're not getting into all that. But I wanted to mention it because, well, you see, the cure for leprosy, I looked it up, and the cure for leprosy was not made available to the public until the 1940s. They probably had some variations of cures before then, but it wasn't it wasn't as prevalent of a cure really until the 1940s. That's a very long time from Bible times to have to deal with this. And I do believe it went down in being an issue, but they still didn't really have a solid cure for it for that whole time, which really sucks. I mean, to think that the cure for this very nasty disease was eventually concocted by some doctor or scientist that put the right potions together, the right chemicals and the right medicines and all that to, voila, make the cure for this stinking, nasty disease. I mean, people couldn't live around people with leprosy. They had to go out and live in a community of other lepers. They had no other choice. It was a very, very sad condition to have to deal with and live with. So my question is, for God, I mean, I understand the importance of needing to be able to identify all this, and it's great. It's great that God, supposedly, bestowed this information on Moses. Wonderful. Great. Thank you, God. That's very, very handy and useful of you, for once. But why? I mean, if God really wanted to display his benevolence and his love for mankind, why couldn't he also give to Moses the cure for leprosy? Certainly he knew it, right? Certainly he didn't want people to suffer for it, right? He doesn't want people to suffer, so he could have provided the cure if he wanted to, right? So, I mean, how's the saying go? If you don't stop evil, you participate in it. You are a participant in it, or something of that nature. And it kind of goes similarly with, if you have the ability to do good and you don't, well, you're kind of participating in the opposites, in the suffering. Meaning, God was willing to tell people how to identify leprosy, but not how to cure it. You know, if you ask me, I think Moses just simply knew ahead of time how to identify leprosy himself. He was likely taught by someone else. And the reason there's no cure here given is because Moses didn't have a cure. I'm sure if he did, he would have gladly said, oh, it was God that bestowed this cure upon us so that we, the chosen people of Israel, would be able to cure lepers. I mean, surely that would make Israel stand out amongst the nations, to be the first nation to cure leprosy. Especially when it was such a very, very prominent problem. But it seems that God preferred to participate in the suffering of humankind by holding back that cure until the 1940s, officially. Seems like he's kind of doing the same thing with cancers and shit like that. Other things that, if he knows the answer to cure, then he should be helping, right? Just some food for thought. But chapter 15 is where we get to the taboo business. God decides to get into the subject of orderly discharges. Both natural and unnatural. And hopefully I won't get in trouble for talking about this shit with the YouTube algorithm or anything. This is all purely meant to be educational. And everything's in reference to, what I'm reading here in the Bible. You can look it up for yourself. Leviticus 15. And some of this I nearly completely missed while glazing by, because I had no idea what they were saying at first, because it's the original King James that I'm going off of here. Very old way of speaking. And some of these words don't even mean the same thing that they do anymore these days. And they just had a different way of saying certain things, to where if you didn't know what they were talking about, you may as well be Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. And so first I'm going to talk about the natural bodily discharges. Because the Bible doesn't really put it all completely in order. It likes to spell things out individually. Like it talks about the man going through unclean discharges, then natural discharges, then the woman doing natural discharges, then unnatural, and the whole process of what to do for all that shit. But we're just going to talk about the natural for both male and female first, and then the unnatural for both. Going with the men first, because that's the way the Bible likes to do it. It straight up talks about it. It straight up says, I'm just going to read it, because there's no other way to go with it. Fuck. Verse 16. If any man's seed of copulation go out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until the even. According to commentaries, and I don't fully believe them, but I'll share my theory momentarily. They say, the commentaries, they say that this is referring to nightly emissions. Apparently from not wanking off enough. Because as far as I know, that's really... I mean, unless you have... I mean, some people have lots of nightly emissions, more than others. Everyone's a bit different, but typically, in order to have them, you have to not be wanking off. The thing is, there's nothing here that says anything about that. Now, why is this an interesting subject to me? Well, to worth mentioning. I mean, God thought it was worth mentioning, for one thing. But Christians like to argue, some of them like to argue that masturbation is a sin, that it's bad. And this is actually... I mean, this verse does not say anything about nightly emissions. I believe there's another verse. Yes, there is a verse later on somewhere else that talks about that sort of thing, in a different book altogether, actually. But this isn't saying at all how the seed of copulation is leaving the body. All it's basically saying is, if sperm leaves the body, the guy's got to take a bath. That is all it is saying. Christians love to take it so much further, because they have this weird well, not all of them, many of them have this weird purification thing deal going on, that they don't believe in sex before marriage, they don't believe in masturbation, some of them believe that having intercourse is strictly for procreation and isn't meant to be enjoyed, or is only meant to be enjoyed by the man but not the woman. A lot of bullshit in there. I know. I don't agree with it. I'm glad to not be a part of it anymore. Like I said, not all Christians are like that, but many are. So this, to me, is interesting because it's not specifying that masturbation itself is wrong. There's a whole nother verse about God striking someone dead over it, but that is a very different situation because it did have to do with procreation. It just wasn't. It was about. It had to do with. Well, it's one of those weird Bible stories where the custom was for if a brother died, a younger brother was to marry the older brother's wife and procreate under the dead brother's name so that the dead brother's inheritance could go on to pass on to the children. And the younger brother wouldn't get any kind of inheritance or any kind of it was weird. It was really weird. And anyways, the guy involved didn't do what he was supposed to and God struck him dead. So God obviously does take it seriously to some degree, but it's a bit unclear. I mean, he seems rather chill about it here. He doesn't even say to offer a sin offering or anything like that. Yes, he does talk about sin offerings again, which we'll come back to shortly. But so that is for the man. For the woman, the natural discharge there. Well, obviously, I mean, it uses a lot of the same words, but because it's with women, this brings up, it's not talking about masturbating for them. I'm not even sure the Bible believes in such a thing. A lot of Christians are against it for women as well. It's fucked up. But for the women, it goes into talking about period. And believe it or not, there's not a bad idea given here. One of the rules is that once a woman starts bleeding on her time of the month, that she is actually to be separated from everyone for 7 days, a whole week. And then there's this whole thing about anything she sits on or lies on is unclean until the evening or until it's washed, and she has to get washed. And if any guy sleeps with her, then he's unclean until he takes a bath and until the evening and all that. So and it goes on and on and on. But it's ridiculous how God gets into it all. But the main point is that the women automatically get a break from everyone during their time of the month. And it's obviously they didn't know as much about the female body back then because not all women have the same experience of that time of month. Some of them have a lot more discharge, some of them have zero. There's a whole range, and some of them they almost all go through something. A whole range of emotions usually with it. A very, very, very small percentage don't experience anything or have any kind of discharge. And they're quite fortunate, I dare say, because 99% do go through something. And so depending on how much they go through, according to this, well, apparently the messier you are, you automatically, well, if you have any kind of mess, you automatically get a full week vacation from everyone. From the kids, from the husband, from... lucky you. Seems like they had something. They nailed something right here. Give the lady her space and some chocolates, some food to make her happy, and leave her alone until she is done. And so, great, great two ideas right there. Just automatically taking a bath or washing your hands after masturbating. And if you're a woman and it's your time of month, you get a whole week vacation off from dealing with everyone. They make it sound a little bit dirtier there. They keep using the word unclean over and over again. Oh, there's blood, there's things coming out, it's unclean. They make it sound terrible, honestly. Like, you really have to dwell on the fact that you're getting a vacation from everyone. That's really that's the main upside to all these rituals and shit in this one case. But then we go to the unnatural discharges, which I don't even want to think about in detail or specifics or anything like that. There is something, though, that I do want to mention. And it's the same for both the male and the female. If they had any sort of natural negative discharges, and then they eventually got better, they were to bring in, remember what I said they had to bring in from last week? The exact same thing. For the pregnancy, for making it through the pregnancy, yeah, the exact same thing. A burnt offering and a sin offering. It repeats it, the whole set of instructions for male and female separately. You can see it in verse 14, and then over in verse 29. They didn't have to bring a lamb, which was nice, but they had to at least bring the cheap version, the pigeons. That was like the coupon sacrifice, I guess you could say. And it says right in verse 15, the priest shall offer them, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. So am I right to understand this is automatically assuming there is some sort of sin involved in this uncleanliness, in this unsickness, in this sickness that occurred, that involved this unhealthy discharge? That seems to be the implication here. Why does there need to be a sin offering if no sin was committed? There seems to be a huge deal around blood, and yes, blood is part of what's mentioned with the unnatural discharges. So it gets a little explicit. I don't know what all the diseases would be that would cover this sort of thing, but I don't really want to know or find out. But why is atonement needed? Why is a sin offering needed if they didn't actually do anything wrong? The burnt offering, I get it. You're obligated to thank God for healing you of your sickness, of your unhealthiness, whatever the nasty business was that was going on downstairs, and God fixed it. Yeah, that's great. Okay, sure. Give him a sacrifice, a burnt offering. That makes sense. why does there need to be a sin offering if you didn't sin in the first place? Like, some Christians like to think that if bad things happen to you, it's because God is judging you. Some Christians say, well, that's not always the case, and sometimes it's just God testing you. And if you know the Bible well enough, you know that that is totally the case sometimes. God totally, although seemingly rather unjustly and unfairly and rather harshly, tests his own followers. They don't have to sin for him to do something really mean to them. Just wait till we get to the book of Job. That's going to be very fun. God was a real dick to Job. Job did nothing to deserve it. He was a very, very loyal follower of God. So it stands to reason that there's going to be plenty of times where people are going to get sick. And it's not because of anything they did wrong. It's just something that happens. I don't blame it on the fall of man either. That's ridiculous. It's just something that happens in the world. It's a natural part of life. I don't believe all bad things stem from sin. That's ridiculous. So, if every case... Let me start over. If every time someone comes to offer a burnt offering and a sin offering for getting over a sickness, a lot of those times the person will have done nothing in the first place to have actually sinned, to cause the sickness to fall on them. That makes the sin offering kind of pointless. Unless you're just doing it for a symbol again. Wasting lives again. As always, it's something Yahweh loves to do. He's not a huge fan of keeping things alive. He likes lots of bloodshed, lots of death. But that's God for you. Give me what I want, and I won't hurt you. Or I won't hurt you as badly. Sounds less and less like a loving God and more like an abusive parent or an abusive partner. Yeah, there's always going to be another bad side to Yahweh. Every time you come across something good, he's always ready to ask for more of what you got. And so that will conclude this episode's little look at what Leviticus had for us today. Next week, I shall do something different because by the time you are able to see this video, I will have worked another full week of overtime every day. A total of 66 hours to be exact. And I will be very tired and I will not want to do much. And I will need to recuperate. So, next week will be an update on the challenge. Maybe I'll go over the rules again. Because I have noticed someone posted their answers in the comments section below on one of my videos, which is not part of the rules. And it wouldn't hurt to have another reminder of the rules again. Anyways, so brief reminder of the rules, where the prize money amount stands at in total. And that's probably it for now. I hope you found this video enjoyable, informative, entertaining perhaps. Leave a like, share if you would, subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate it. And well, until next time, my friends, stay safe and farewell.